speakers of our seminar today, How to Survive in Disaster, Mbak Dina and Mas Mujib, participant of the seminar this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me as a Consul of the Republic of Indonesia to the Northern Territory to welcome you all to this seminar, How to Survive in Disaster, organized by PPIA Chapter NT. I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation to the PPIA Chapter NT for hosting this critical seminar, which will explore how can we survive in a disaster. This topic is very relevant because our beloved country, Indonesia, sits along a fertile seismic stream called the Ring of Fire in the Pacific. Because of this volcanic eruption and earthquake, which can present a potential threat of tsunamis. We recognize that the capacity of our emergency and rescue services to deal with large natural disasters need to be enhanced and strengthened. For your information, that the National Disaster Management Agency, BNPB, reported in 2020 there were 2,059 natural disasters in Indonesia. From January to September 2020, as I have mentioned before, there were 2,059 natural disasters in Indonesia, consisting of 771 incidents of floods and 534 whirlwinds and 377 landslides. Most disasters that struck Indonesia were hydrometeorological or disasters that occurred as a result of meteorological phenomena. The natural disasters that happened on the same period had affected and displaced a total of 4.2 million people, claimed 282 lives and rendered 25 people missing, while causing injuries to almost 500. Furthermore, natural disasters damaged more than 31 homes. More than 30,000 homes and 1,419 public facilities. And we have also recorded a total of more than 300 forest and land fires, as well as 5 volcanic eruptions. The BNPB also reported known natural disasters in the form of COVID-19 in Indonesia, with the number of confirmed cases more than 1 million people. Finally, I officially declare this seminar open. May this seminar will help us understand the practical guidance that we need to know when we are facing a natural disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak Consul Gulfan Afero. It was a very wonderful speech. There we gained a few information from your speech. Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite our President, Vincent Nicodemus, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, salam sejahtera. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our event, Dolanan. First, I would like to introduce you the honorable guests in this room. The first one, in Honorable Indonesian Consul Darwin, Mr. Gulfan Afero. The second one, in Honorable Indonesian Consul Darwin for Information, Social and Cultural Affairs, Mrs. Mardiana Warners. In Honorable CDU PhD student, Mr. Mujiburrahman Tontowi. In Honorable CDU PhD student, Mrs. Wispar Dina in Honorable President of CDU IT Students Association, Mr. Pius Adhikari. And the last one will be the others who attend this event. Thank you. Secondly, thank God for the presence of, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to gather in this room. And thank you to PPIA NT, or Indonesian Students Association Incorporated, for this opportunity to be the opening remarks of this event. For the people who don't know, Dolanan is a discussion or forum to share together about any trending topics in Indonesia and Australia. In the matter of trending topics in Indonesia recently, we hear that in Indonesia is in grief. A lot of disasters have been happening, such as plane crash, earthquakes, floods, landslide, volcano eruption, and COVID-19. According to the explanation that I introduced, I would like to inform the agenda tonight. The first one will be 2 sessions of presentation from Mr. Mujib and Mrs. Dina. The second one will be a Q&A session for all audiences. And the third one will be an introduction about the benefit card and registration of PPIA NT. And at the end of the event, there will be dinner, fundraising, and networking session. And finally, I would like to thank to our sponsors too, Indonesian Consulate Darwin and Diaspora NT, to support this event. And I hope this event will be useful for everyone in this room, and hopefully this event will be successful. That's all from me. Thank you and enjoy. Salam Pancasila.
Thank you, Nico, for your wonderful speech. So before we're moving to the main event, I would like to remind you guys that this event also commemorates fundraising of Sulawesi earthquake. So we have a small donation box at the back, or if you would like to transfer directly to PPIA NT bank account. So now we're moving to the main event. So before that, I would like to introduce you two of our speakers. There will be Mas Mujiburrahman dan Ibu Wispar Dina. So I will give you a little bit of background for two of the speakers. So for the first speaker, Mas Mujiburrahman, so he has 10 years experience in disaster management in Indonesia, working for various international organizations such as Save the Children, Japan International Cooperation Agency, and International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. He was in the integrated research on disaster risk. So in 2018, he was awarded LPDP scholarship from Indonesian government to pursue a PhD in humanitarian, emergencies and disaster management studies at CDU. So that's for Mas Mujiburrahman. And the second speaker will be Ibu Wispar Dina. So Ibu Dina has 9 years of disaster management professional experience. While is working for the Association of the Southeast Asian Nation Secretariat, she was involved with ASEAN 2008 Cyclone Nargis operation in Myanmar and 2009 Padang earthquake in Indonesia, and also assisted the establishment of ASEAN According Office Humanitarian Assistance Disaster Management. With the United Nations World Food Program in Indonesia, she was involved in the 2018 Palu and Sunda Straits tsunami and earthquake disaster response operations. She also led the Kampung Siaga Bencana. So it is actually a study project with the Indonesian Ministry of Social Affairs. So her proposed research project is a continuation of the KSB study project, this time taking a more rigorous approach to investigate factors that sustain various KSB in Indonesia. So Ibu Dina was a recipient of the Australian Government 2015 Australia Asia Endeavour Awards and currently the recipient of the 2017 Lembaga Penyandang Dana Pendidikan LPDP Scholarship awarded by Indonesian Finance Ministry. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Mujiburrahman. Please give an applause.
Okay, thanks everybody, welcome to this session. My research is about multi-hazard early warning systems or early warning systems in Indonesia, multiple hazards, earthquakes, tsunamis, flood, landslide. So in the next 15 minutes I'll explain to you just a small portion of my research. Maybe some information will make you be more prepared for the future upcoming disasters in 2021. Okay, I will first discuss about a short profile, background of my research, some initial findings, and finally what to prepare or what to think about in 2021. So previously, Farhan already explained the introduction about my experience. I'm a practicing law student for my bachelor and masters in Indonesia, and I continued 12 years of humanitarian Indonesia since 2006. And in this last 3 years, I've been focusing in the academic sector as a PhD student. So, in this slide, you can see that Indonesia has beautiful beaches and volcanoes, but at the same time, it's dangerous. So that's what we have to be prepared for. We can see that recently my hometown, Yogyakarta, had the volcano eruption just a couple of days ago, and since last month, people already start evacuating to the safe area. In the first couple of weeks, we had a plane crash which occurred in the north of Jakarta. And finally, we had the large earthquake in Sulawesi and also floods in Borneo. So we can see that Indonesia also is beautiful with the beaches, with the mountains, forest, but there is dangers that we must be prepared for. And my research is focusing how to prepare for these hazards and what has the government prepared, what facilities do they have to make us be able to survive the next disaster. As you can see, all of these disasters is occurring during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have to modify how we respond to disaster or how to prepare for disaster with the COVID-19 in Indonesia or in the world. And you can see just this month we have 260 disaster events that occur in January, the majority being floods and landslides. And on the other hand, a milestone for Indonesia is that 1 million positive cases has been detected in Indonesia. So we can see that these two events is making the Indonesian government and the Indonesian people try to find ways of how to overcome or how to plan for the next 2021. So In my research, I tried to see how did the government respond to disasters from the pre-colonial times in Indonesia when we were by the Dutch government. Second phase is when we were Indonesians' independence. How did they respond to disaster? And finally, after the reform. So, as you can see that in the first phase, when it was still under the Dutch colonial government, we experienced a large volcano eruption, the Consulate Volcano Eruption. And that was the first time that the Dutch government wanted to build a volcano monitoring post. So the first volcano monitoring post was 1919 in East Java, and then they built a volcano monitors to anticipate future disasters in the region. Now, an interesting thing that happened in this 1919 and 1920 was also the spread of the Spanish flu virus, which within a 3-year time took at least the lives of people infected, about 1 million people 100 years ago. And 100 years later, we are in a similar situation where we have multiple disasters and being faced by a pandemic. So this is something that we should think about and anticipate. So under the colonial government, they focus more on the protecting the assets. And when they moved to the Indonesian's independence, the warning system became analog, or they focused on visual, seeing the volcano, monitoring the sky and others. And then finally, in the next period, in the reform or 2008, it was more focused on digital. And my research will be, the start of my research will be showing what are the digital services that is provided by the Indonesian government that we can access to feel more safe in Indonesia. So, the Indonesian government has many services that is provided for anyone in Indonesia. You have the Tsunami Warning system, which can provide a warning within 5 minutes after a large earthquake, whether a tsunami will occur or not. This is one system. The next system is monitoring. There is 127 volcanoes in Indonesia, and monitoring 24 hours about where is the next potential volcano eruption. And then we have the drought. We have the drought warning system, the forest fire hotspot monitoring. So all of these system is fragmented underneath their own department. Department of Meteorology. You have the Department of Energy, and you have the National Disaster Management Agency. All have their specific warning system targeting a specific hazard. But now we can see 100 years ago and now 100 years later, we can see that disasters is becoming more complex, not just natural hazards, but also epidemics. And in our case, this month, a technological disaster, having a plane crash. And this is something that we must think about, how to anticipate these complex and cascading disasters. So the government have tried to make a unified multi-hazard early warning system with all of these warning systems, which is fragmented, becoming one multi-hazard disaster management plan. The backbone is from the tsunami warning system, which is going to be elaborated on a bit later. Now, the best way to survive a disaster, the first thing, or that I could stress the most important thing, is information. Is understanding that we are living in a dangerous or disaster-prone region. So understanding about the disaster is the most important thing, especially in my research. We have to know where is the disaster-prone maps and what research has been written about disasters in Indonesia. So you can see the most important one is understanding the hazard. And I think it's the responsibility of everyone in this room to really understand what are the dangers in Indonesia. If we understand the dangers, the next step is first, we have to try to monitor the risk around us. And the Indonesian government already established 24-hour warning systems where we can monitor real-time the dangers or foresee the possible dangers ahead. Third of all, is about the way to survive is when there is a warning, we have to disseminate the information. So we cannot just hold the information to ourselves, or the information cannot just be stuck or bottleneck in the government, it's our responsibility is to share this information to the wider public. Maybe if they don't have social media or they don't have internet access, we could go door to door and disseminate the information. And finally, it's about the responsibility to act upon that information. So in my research, I focus on these 4 quadrants of how to survive. First, by understanding. Second, by monitoring. Then by disseminating or sharing. And finally, by acting. So the takeaway of my research is more of a people-centered approach, where you understand what's the dangers and you understand how to act. Now, I want you to understand that even though people-centered or people focusing on trying to protect themselves, at the same time, the government and the local government in Indonesia, there are people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, throughout the year, non-stop working, who are monitoring these. So the critical link is, to save your life is by having access to these emergency operation centers, which are 24 hours at the local government. So even though there is a sophisticated system at the national level, if you don't have a link to the emergency operation centers, their capacity to respond, how fast they could respond to an emergency, that those people will help you. So while we're asleep, these guys are monitoring and anticipating for a disaster to occur. And in my research, you can see the different capacities or the level of how strong they are in providing the assistance. Some strong provinces and districts, such as in Bali, they have a very strong emergency operations center where they could, after a phone call, 5 minutes, they'll be in the location providing help. But if you go to the more remote regions, help is more delayed, and we have to prioritize on what's happening in the community or what's built in the community. And maybe it'll be further elaborated by the next speaker about community-based activities. So you can see that the government already trying their best in building these emergency operation centers in the local government region. At the same time, with the advancement of information and technology, a mobile app is being used, and the government of Indonesia has also tried to push the usage of understanding the risk. So INARIS is the first platform that we can see our location and whether our homes, our schools, our office is a disaster prone or not. It will give you a free tier level system where green is safe, yellow and orange is medium, and red is a high risk region. So you can see that the government made that. Unfortunately, there is still a low number of people downloading these apps and really trying to understand. So that's the challenge that these apps have. The second app is by the Meteorological Agency, which is also an app about sharing information about fire hotspots, earthquake and tsunami, and also the floods. And there's only 5 million people or users that download it. And another one with the Magma Indonesia is by the Department of Energy. They focus on the early warning system for volcanoes and landslide. It's only 100,000. And finally, a local NGO, Save the Children, Indonesia also made an app which is more children-friendly about these disasters. So efforts has been done by the international, by the Indonesian government and international NGOs and local NGOs to try to build these apps so people understand. But unfortunately, the number of people downloading and using is still minimum. So out of 270 million people population of Indonesia, you can see that the outreach using mobile apps is still limited, and that's why it's very important to do community-based activities which don't have internet access or which doesn't have access to mobile phones or smartphones. It's very important to have those activities established in your region. So what about the future after trying to understand the disaster or the history of the disaster, understand the capacity of the local government? So what the future be like? So So we can see that Australia has already passed through its second wave, and it's now Australia is doing a great job in trying to minimize the COVID-19. Whereas on the other hand, Indonesia is on still trying to. We don't know when the peak will be, but the vaccine will push down the rate. Also, the future of Indonesia is how will the tourism industry will be affected by these future disasters. At the same time, with a pandemic, we can see future scenarios like a possible large earthquake and tsunami occurring between Bali and Australia, and we can see that some regions of Australia will be hit in this worst case scenario. So we also have to prepare for future scenarios of large earthquake and tsunami, not only hitting tourist sites in Indonesia, but it can also hit like Western Australia and some parts of the tip of the Northern Territory. So this is something we have to think about living in the border between the two countries. And finally, what about forest fire? We are now entering, we're in the peaks of La Nina. What happens when El Nino comes and there will be a prolonged drought season? We can see that the droughts, the fires and the droughts, we can see that Australia has the largest amounts of hectares being burnt down, more to Indonesia in 2019, and way far more in the worst forest fires in Indonesia. And we can see that a trend of warming in the globe is also affecting Australia. So we living in the Northern Territory also must consider how to prepare or how to monitor or how to be safe in this pandemic and in future dry seasons. And this is just a previous report about the links between tropical cyclones and climate change. Probably there will be more frequent, more intense cyclones occurring. The first year I arrived in Darwin, Cyclone Marcus came and made some destructions in Darwin. Probably the future wet season will be stronger cyclones. And what about technological disasters? Have you ever thought about this? Like the bomb, the explosion in Lebanon, or oil spills between Australia and Indonesia, or another plane crash. So this is something that we must think about that could happen in 2021, and how we want to prepare for it is the important thing. So my last slide is saying that the important thing in emergency management or disaster management is having the right information and acting upon it. Having all of this knowledge, being a PhD student but not being able to act, I think would also be useless. So thank you everyone for listening to my speech.
Thank you, Mas Mujib. So it was a really great presentation. So before we're moving to the second presentation, I would like to remind you that we will be having a discussion session, so a Q&A session after the second presentation. So please just save your question until the second presentation. Now I would like to invite Ibu Dina to the stage. Please give an applause to you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the opportunity that was provided to me by the PPIA CDUNT. I was asked by the organizers to share about Kampung Siaga Bencana, or disaster resilient villages. So it's not it's about my research, but what I will share here is more about the Kampung Siaga Bencana itself, so the KSB. So I will be telling you a story about how they are established and what they have been doing, in responding and to prepare for disasters. But to give you the context of the KSB study and then further my research is we did the WFP and the Ministry of Social Affairs did this study. It's usually in how the UN or the UNWFP operates in Indonesia, because there are a lot of UN bodies and different UN bodies with different mandate. The UN came up with this is the humanitarian affairs structure, where every UN have a specific or designated area of work, so they do not have like similar activities. With the UNWFP, we are the lead in logistics, in food security with FAO, or Food and Agriculture Organization, and we're also the lead in emergency telecom. So we have very big operation, but normally in disaster areas or disaster countries now in like Syria, and then Rohingya is where we also deploy, not we because I'm not with WFP anymore, but they deploy like logistical items, they build their tents, they transport logistic from one point to the other. They also have a dedicated UN air service that could airlift the victims and also logistical equipment from one point to the other. So with this structure and organization, the UN is determined to not try to duplicate each other. And with Indonesia, the UNWFP was very active in the Aceh earthquake, where it was the first UN body to be able to do work in the ground with the former VP Yusuf Kala at that time. And then, because Indonesia gradually aware that we cannot always respond to a disaster, because the money that is used to build bridges, the money that is used to build houses, it's very expensive. So they were thinking of shifting to a disaster response framework, to a disaster risk reduction. So how could we minimize the victims? How could we minimize the disadvantage of disaster? That is where then WFP also switched their thinking. We cannot always drop logistic, and the government don't want us to always be in every area of disaster. So WFP shift also their work to give advice to the partnering government, which is the BNPB, or the National Disaster Management Agency, and the Ministry of Social Affairs. So with our with WFP expertise in logistic, emergency telecom, and food security, then we partner. This is with the Ministry of Social Affairs, because they are the biggest logistician in Indonesia. BNPB, they only have 3 regional warehouse, but with MOSA, or Ministry of Social Affairs, they have logistic warehouse in all of the province until the sub-district. And that is where WFP expertise were used by the government. And one of the requests from the government of Indonesia is to look into this Kampung Siaga Bencana. This is a program that they started to make villages more resilient. So how could we get the villagers, educate them, train them on how to respond to disaster, on how to prepare for disaster, so that if a disaster happens, they don't wait for the government. Indonesia have like 17,000 islands, with a lot of island that is very remote. You can imagine how like only 500 people working in the MOSA, or Ministry of Social Affairs, when they have a very small team, I think consisting of 50 people that works with disaster management. If they wait for these people, the lives would not be safe, people will be hungry, so that's what the government want. How can the people be self-resilient to disaster. So that's why the Ministry of Social Affairs established this program, and they wanted to see whether it's successful or not. Are the KSB doing well? Are they, if they're farm, are they still doing activities? So they asked for WFP's expertise and to look into the lesson learned and best practices of the KSB in Indonesia. So that is where my research started. Now this is the definition of a KSB in the the Ministry of Social Affairs Regulation number 128 year 2011. So KSB is a community-based disaster management which empowers community in disaster-prone area utilizing local resources. This is the history of the KSB. The first KSB it was established in 2010. Although the regulation is on 2011, it was usual for the government to have a program, and then they evaluate, and then based on the evaluation, they make the regulation. So the first kampung, it was the first village. It was established in Desa Hantara, so Hantara Village Kuningan in West Java in 2010. And then this KSB became a flagship of the MOSA's program. And they duplicate, replicate, and establish more until in 2020 there's 818 KSB in 34 provinces in Indonesia. So from one in 2010 to 818, and I think they have a target of 1,000 KSBs. Now, what is Kampung Siaga Bencana? So, what do they do? So, these kampung, how they were established is that Ministry of Social Affairs would ask for, because Ministry of Social Affairs have agency called Social Affairs Agency in all the province. They ask for the province to go back to their villages and ask which village would like to be a KSB, which village would like to be trained to respond to and prepare for disasters. So usually they will have a 3 days training session and simulation where they train the people, the villagers who fulfill the requirement. They train them in SAR, search and rescue. They train sick because the mandate of Ministry of Social Affairs and Disaster is usually public kitchen. SAR is with the BNPB, but they help, and then Ministry of Social Affairs will be providing public kitchens to the affected population. So the Kampung Siaga Bencana was mainly trained on how to set up a public kitchen in the areas affected in disasters. And not only that, they would have to do disaster mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. This is a traditional cycle of disaster management, where mitigation is where it's the long term of how you prevent disaster happening or how you minimize effect of disaster. While the preparedness is the cycle just before you do emergency response, like Mujib already explained, early warning. If a disaster happens, usually, for example, if it's flooding, they could know from the depth of the water, and then when it happens, then the head of the village will simulate the information that the depth is rising and it's not in a normal condition, and they give early warning to the villagers. That is the preparedness. So it's just the pre from the response, and then disaster response is when after the disaster happens. So if a flood happens, usually the KSB would be activated, and then they would coordinate with the BNPB and try to rescue people as much of they can. And then there is a section of the KSB that would like set up a temporary shelter, and they would set up temporary kitchen, and they would cook in that kitchen, and they would provide meals for for the affected community. And they would do this in shift, and it's open 24 hours, usually for a period that is agreed by the KSB and also the officials in the village. And then disaster recovery. They do disaster recovery also by assisting the socio-economic impact for the people that are affected. Like people who then became jobless. And then KSB would facilitate that with the village facilitator, that kind of thing. So the KSB is actually doing the whole cycle of the disaster, from the mitigation, preparation, responding, and recovery. The core values, I'll just explain. The cooperation, accountability, participation, respect for local wisdom is self-explanatory, but the core value that is really highly regarded by MOSA is voluntary and self-sufficient. Disaster is an event that could give you a very immense trauma. So people who are dealing with disaster, they need to be prepared, like mentally and physically. So they have to, and they need to be voluntary. It's not that they would have salary after like doing search and rescue. No, it won't. They don't get salary for being a KSB members. What else? Yeah, if it's voluntary, you just go to the meetings. If needed, you do disaster response. So even after the establishment, the KSB would have to search for their own fund. Usually, they would go to like a leader of the village who will provide everything they needed when disaster operation happens. So, or they go to the social affairs agency and collaborate with the social affairs, because social affairs have the disaster relief items, and the KSB will use that to cook food for the people, the affected people. But yeah, their participation of being a member, being a KSB leader is truly voluntary. MOSA will only fund their establishment. So the 3 days training, the 3-day simulation is funded and led by MOSA. But after that, the KSB themselves would have to fund their activities. Self-sufficient is a bit same as voluntarily. So in the MOSA Regulation 120, it said that KSB needs to have lumbung sosial. So it's a social kind of like a warehouse or a social pit that you can put the food needed there, you could put the equipment there. So they could not rely on the government, they could not rely on third party. They would have to rely on what their village resources are. If not, they will not be sustained as a KSB. So for self-sufficient, there's a lot of very interesting stories. So for the study, we visited 35 KSB in 8 provinces, and we talked to 659 people, if I'm not mistaken. And every KSB in every province have their own uniqueness. There's a KSB in Kalimantan that what they do is they always respond to forest fires, because Kalimantan has a lot of forest fires. And with the wealth of experience that they gain from the period of time, they understand that they need to have a fire rescue truck, and then they built their own fire rescue truck for the KSB to use when a fire happens. So they're very, very creative. There's another KSB in Jawa Barat, West Java, that West Java is very cultural, very artsy, and they have like a group of musicians that could provide entertainment, and from that they collect money, and from that money it goes to the KSB. So that's another way for them to survive. And then there's another KSB that the leaders who are very generous. He said that what we'll do when a disaster happens, they will come to me, and I will get any food from my from my field, and then I will put it in the lumbung, and then they could cook that food, and they could use that food when they do disaster response. So everything is actually supplied by themselves. Usually MOSA will give some items, but you need to sustain yourself if you want this organization to go on and to perform disaster response activities. So this is the findings, best practices of the study report that we reported to MOSA, and some of the findings is actually have been taken up to be a policy in MOSA. What is interesting is when we because I'm from the development sector, and we really know that it's very hard to make a program sustain, because you need money, and if people who works in the development sector knows that sometimes if we do a project in one area and then we pull out, the project will not continue. That's a classical problem in development. We thought the same, because the principle that MOSA was doing is the same. They establish, they fund, and then they go out. They don't give money again. And we thought that KSB will say we need money so we can sustain the activities. But turns out when we talked to these KSB, funding was actually number 3. So in their mind, it was not the money that could sustain them, but in their mind, it was the need for their capacity to be enhanced. They say that I am aware that this is voluntarily, and we take that seriously. So we don't need money, we don't need the salary, but we need our capacity to be enhanced. KSB in West Java mentioned to me that when they were responding to flood, they were only using flip-flops, and they didn't know that this could cause accident because of the electricity that could go in the water, and it could risk lives. So they're risking their life in the front line, but they don't know how to keep themselves safe. So they're saying, please train us how to keep ourselves safe. And in the Palu disaster response in 2018, there were a lot of volunteers that sadly lost their life, and that is what they are echoing. They're saying, we're doing this voluntarily. We're doing this because we want to help other people. We're doing this because of religious reasons, because God wants us to help other people. But please, give us the training that we need to be safe. So that was their most important takeaway. Okay, the theme, surviving 2021, for the government, I think it's really important for the government of Indonesia to keep prioritizing on disaster risk reduction activities. And if they know the value add of what KSB are bringing to the area, they should still continue to provide indirect support. Not direct, not through money, but give them the training, give them the appreciation. They mentioned that when we had a simulation, when the KSB had competition, that was really exciting for us. That kept us going. The appreciation that the government give to us makes us felt that what we do is meaningful. So we advocate to MOSA, keep providing indirect support. Keep giving appreciation to the KSB, because they're risking their life, and the government needs to be aware of this. The second one is training for KSB, particularly focusing on safety and security aspect, as already I explained. And then encouraging cross-cultural sectoral collaboration, inter- and intra-government agency, and between government agency with other humanitarian organizations. As I mentioned before, that we work in the development sector, and is very prone to duplicate each other effort. Even the CBDRM project, the BNPB has one, the Ministry of Fishery has one, the Ministry of Environment I think has one, similar to KSB but different. So it's good to, just join effort to maximize the result, not for each organization to work by themselves, because it's prone to competition. Even with the KSB and what BNPB has with their Destana is also like a KSB, but it's from another agency. They're prone to have competition between them because for them it's like we want the organization to be recognized. So just avoid that and try to seek for a more complementary, supplementary way of working. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Ibu Dina, for your presentation. I personally had gained a lot of information today, especially regarding the disaster, not only in Indonesia but wherever in the world, because it makes me more aware now. So because disaster always can happen anytime, so I would like to ask you guys to give applause for the both of the two speakers. So before we're moving to the Q&A sections, I would like to remind you guys, so we have a snack section over there. So if you guys want to grab any drinks or any chips, or please feel free to grab some chips. Alright, so we're moving to the discussion session. So I would like to give 3 opportunities to the floor to raise questions. So the question can be addressed to both of the speakers. So if anyone have any question, you can raise your hand. Yes?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm probably going to address the question for both.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mujib has mentioned before that Indonesia has a lot of disaster happening since how years ago. It seems to be like a pattern until now, right?
Yeah.
And just want to ask whether or not there's a plan in place, especially the recovery plan, because we know because of the patterns, there might be like intergenerational, if not transgenerational trauma happening in the community, right? So I just want to know whether or not there's a plan in place, in the recovery plan, to address those trauma, especially baby cats, because you guys are working in a community-based recovery plan, right? So probably definitely have that, and probably have some plan to address that stuff.
Okay, so would you like to answer or give answer, or
Yeah.
I'll just save it for the...
Yeah, I'll just directly, since it's a discussion. Yeah, so I think for a specific plan for recovery, especially for mental health or trauma, I think it will be more under the Department of Social Affairs to have a specific program, psychosocial support program. She could explain more, but on my side, I don't think there is. Yeah.
So yes, MOSA has this unit. It's not a subunit. So there's like the Director General, and then there's the Director for Disaster Management, and then so there's a Deputy Director for psychosocial support. And like I mentioned, that MOSA has an agency or social affair agency in each province until the sub-district. And they have the same role, so the roles are mirroring the national. And they also have that psychosocial support. So KSB, when they are trained in that 3 days, there's also a training material on trauma and how to deal with it. But it's with their own local wisdom. So they always tailor the training with their own local wisdom, because in one area, probably it's not effective to target with a general strategy, but they have ways based on their local wisdom. Yeah. So I think that's it. But they are trained to, like, how do you call it? They are trained to assist. Yeah. Assist the
more like
affected.
supporting.
Yeah.
So So there's no like evidence-based, approach-based.
No, this is the first evidence-based, probably evidence-based study that is done in KSB. So KSB is also working with the local organization like Save the Children in that area, and they also do training for the KSB. That was what I was mentioning, but I forgot to mention. But the KSB also does training with the civil society organization, and I remember that in Jogja there is one that is dealing with psychosocial problems also. So that's why but there's not like a specific plan on trauma or, you know.
So it's more of an outreach.
Yeah, it's more like an assistance when it happens. Yeah.
Thank you. Are you happy with the answers? So anyone else want to ask? Yes, Mr.
Okay, continuing from my friend's question here, like you mentioned about trauma and grief. I think with the current shift in disaster literature, which focuses on a paradigm shift from management to preparedness or even now resilience, what is the contribution of KSB in building the overall resilience of the communities? For example, you did mention that the core area of operations is still revolves around disaster management, like mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. How are they performing in building overall resilience, which include lots of other things, livelihood enhancement, for example, women empowerment, poverty, and trauma and grief, and overall building overall general resilience of the people?
So for KSB, yes, they do not only respond, but they also do a lot of resilient work. So because they are the villagers themselves, what villagers tend to do is they tend to rely to KSB more than going to even the social agencies, social affairs agency in their area, because they're the villagers. They can talk to themselves. So what KSB do is they usually have a meeting with the villagers to socialize about disaster and the preparedness on how to do preparedness for disaster. And I don't think they have a role for the long time resilience, because it belongs to the National Disaster Management Agency. All the program about resilience, about about finding a new job after it happens. Those are more or less in the national level programs, because they do cash for work, like those stuff. But because KSB or some of the KSB are very trusted, they do not only assist the villagers in disaster, but a lot of KSB says that even like social problems, like if somebody dies, if somebody become mentally disabled, they go to the KSB. So I think that is how they build resilience, just by being with their own community and advocating for a more prepared community to prepare for disaster.
So is it possible for the government to step in, like for instance, put up some funding?
Yes, it's possible.
That's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been put in place at the moment, or
No, they're only for KSB specifically. The only funding is for establishment, but they could, if like a village gives a proposal, they could look into that, but not like in a regulated manner.
Yeah, probably I just want to add about this general resilience. If we look at the numbers, like the number of villages, there is like 70,000 villages in Indonesia. And the national government, National Disaster Management Agency, just like there's 1,000 villages who have a disaster resilient program. And that's like a top-down program by the government. Like it's really hard to document a bottom-up disaster resilient program by the community themselves. It's really hard to document that, or to document local knowledge or indigenous communities who really have a strong resilience and relate that to a disaster management program at the national level. So in my research, I see that there are some communities like radio communities, people living in the slope of the volcano in Bali. They really understand about the spiritual and the disaster sense of Gunung Agung volcano. But then are they documented by the government? It's like very minimal documentation on that level of ground up community activities done.
So, do you see any value in that, documenting that and actually acting upon?
Yeah, because there is some efforts done by the Indonesian government to document success stories where indigenous culture, like in the Merapi volcano, there is a strong culture in Yogyakarta of the radio community and people living in the volcano, how they evacuate. Like one of the local wisdom is evacuating the cows and the sheep from the volcano, and then the people will follow. Whereas if we mandatory evacuate the people with the trucks, they don't want to go because they're still thinking about their cows. So those type of stories have been collected. So when we are preparing for the next volcano eruption in another island, these people from these villages would go to like Bali and explain, this is what we did in our village. So having an ability to replicate local knowledge based on what they think it's good for the people living in the volcano, it helps. But trying to have a systematic national, okay, these are all of it, is very difficult to document at a national level.
But since you are working at a national level, like Dina is more at the community level, is there any effort going on to include community as well, like to talk about community knowledge and community wisdom? So bringing that thing at the national level as well, or making some
I think there is an effort. There is an effort to involve more participation in the community in the disaster management process. And now with decentralization in Indonesia, it becomes a more empowering role of the provincial and district governments to have a stronger role rather than just relying on the national government. So I think that's the general state of resilience in Indonesia right now.
Thank you. Are you happy with your answer? So, last question, anyone would want to ask? Yes, Ibu Rifka.
I just have a question for Dina. I was wondering if you knew the latest number of how many villages that have adopted or still have the disaster resilient villages in the NT.
So according to MOSA, currently 2020 there is 818 PSCs, approximately 818. There's a lot. Yeah, that was what the other research was going to do, a quantitative study about whether they are still active with the indexes, but it didn't happen. So when we did the qualitative study, we asked for MOSA to visit active KSB and non-active KSB, and it was like 50-50. So yeah, but it doesn't represent the all statistic because the study didn't happen.
Thank you. So there was one more question from Ibu Diana. I couldn't see that side, so that's why. So please, Ibu Diana, if you have any questions to our speakers.
Thank you. I just Pak Mujib is explaining about the applications, about the information about disaster, which is, of course, as in my work offline, we are applying for that applications also. So if something happened in Indonesia, we are the first people that being asked what happened in Indonesia. So about these applications that you already presented to us, it's just some of them is already not together. It's just a different application. Is there any in Southeast Asia or another in the world that probably you researched, it's already incorporated in the same application for disasters?
There are some mobile applications that tries to monitor each hazard, but on a regional level. For example, in ASEAN, they have the AHA Center that does probably they will provide you a weekly update of all of the disasters and possible. And also the UN OCHA has that, what's happening at the Asia Pacific level. But specifically for Indonesia, just having the one app, maybe not yet. And that's something that I'm trying to propose to the Indonesian government, to have a unified multi-hazard early warning system where one app can cover all. An attempt for the younger generation, for like high school students, Save the Children, try to make one app that can try to generate warnings for each type of disaster, but it's still in development phase. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you for everyone who raised the question. Thank you for both of the speakers. But unfortunately, I have to close this Q&A session. But later on, during the dinner, we can have another discussion with directly to the speakers. So moving on, so then our next agenda is coming from Ardi Tomo and Anneke. So they will introduce our new membership card, PPIA NT. Please, Ardi Tomo and Anneke.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to Dolanan PPIA NT 2021. So we will like to talk about our membership card PPIA NT. So before we start, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Vito, and this is my partner Anneke.
Or you can call me Kinke for short. Nice to meet you all.
And I call her Big. And then so. Shall we?
Yeah, sure. Let's just start.
So first of all, about our story of the membership PPIA NT.
I'm gonna tell you a little story on why the reasoning behind the creation of a membership card. So, as you may already know, PPIA NT have created so many events in the past, and they've been quite an outstanding experience. But the thing is, we feel like all these events that we created were made by Indonesian students for Indonesians only, which was great. But we feel like we haven't quite make an impact for the Darwin community as a whole, and so that's where this card comes in. So we specifically designed this card to create a space for all nationalities and communities in Darwin to get together and work together under the PPIA NT environment. And I guess what's so good about it is you don't have to commit as much, and you don't have to spend as much time if you like to join the membership card, while at the same time still enjoying the benefits that comes with it. So the question is, what are the benefits of the PPIA NT membership card? The first one is you'll get discounts from local businesses, and everyone loves discounts. And at the moment,
price as well.
Yeah, good prices. At the moment, we have 7 sponsors. Dito will explain them later on. And then the second benefit is you'll stay in the loop, and we'll keep you updated on our latest events. And also, you can become a volunteer, and in return, we'll give you a an appreciation certificate, also some vouchers. But the vouchers will be different for each event. For example, our upcoming one will be esports. Anyone knows or familiar with the word esports? No?
Maybe you can talk. We can talk about a little bit about sports.
Yeah, so it's an online gaming championship basically. We plan on having it this April.
So yeah, it's gonna be there's 2 main games. First is FIFA 2001 and 2002. It's like a soccer game. You play 1 by 1, and then the second one we still thinking about it about the PUBG. It's like a shooting game, and the second one is Tekken. It's a fighting game. It's not really fighting, so you can play on the PlayStation, and then you can fight.
There will definitely be prizes. So yeah. So what's the next benefit?
It's networking.
Networking. Obviously, you'll get to meet more people, and then you get to expand your network. And then the last one is, if you find that the experience is valuable and you want to get involved more, you can actually apply to become an executive member. Maybe you want to continue what Nico do. As a member, you want to be the president, or you want to be the vice president. What else? Secretary, treasurer.
Like us, media.
Or even the media person like us, who handles the social media pages and everything. So yeah, that's quite an interesting project that we have here.
So how to use our card or this card? It's really simple and easy. So just bring this card to our sponsor and then just show to them to the front of us or receptionist, and then they will assess you further. And then please remind it, every sponsor has a special benefit, so it's not the same benefit.
It's different for each
different
businesses.
And then how about the expire?
And it only it lasts for 6 months. And it's a $20 payment if you like to extend it. And why do we make it a 6 months period? Because we want to, because this is our first time for launching this project, and we want to have routine feedbacks every 6 months, so we can expand our sponsors and improve the services.
Yeah, we don't want to end up like just only 7 sponsors, so we want more.
Yeah.
So, and then
what happened if you lost your ID?
Unfortunately, you need to pay $10.
$10.
Yeah, and then you still get the same expired, and then you just call Nico.
So keep losing your IDs.
Yeah. So who can get this, and then how you can get this one? So as you mentioned before, anyone can join with us. Really,
yeah.
It's really simple. You can call or SMS
Aldo. He's over there. The guy with glasses.
This is his number. And then pay $20 to PPIA NT bank account.
Or after these events, you can come to us personally and
And then there's a 2 option for you. We can deliver to you, and then extra $5
for delivery
yeah.
to your house.
Sorry, $3.
Oh, $3.
Oh, $3. Oh.
Yeah, for petrol. And then, and then you can pick up in our headquarters in 20 Gaten.
20 Gaten Circuit Jingli.
And then we forgot to mention PPIA now is incorporated now.
Oh yeah, it's incorporated now.
Thanks for all the teams. Can you give an applause for us? This is our
I hate this one.
So you invest in us, we invest in you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, as cringy as it sounds, you invest in us, we invest in you. But it's true. Like we want to work hard to provide the services that you need. So again, your feedbacks are really appreciated in the long run.
And the next one is our sponsor. Like you mentioned it before, we only have 7 sponsors at the moment, but that's fine, eh? And then there's a 3 category of our sponsor. First is food and beverage. The second one is service and servicing, and then the third one is entertainment. So
can everyone read it?
Yep. So first time we have a chat time. So if you member, so you get a free upsize and 15% off if the member purchases more than 4 drinks. And then the next one is from Outback Jack's Steak and Curry. You get a discount 10% per person. And then the entertainment. Why we choose the entertainment? Because come on, we live in Darwin. We need more entertainment. So bring your family, bring your friends to time zone, and then you will get the buy one of the time play package. We will get another one free of equal or less of value. And then the next one, the KT Auto Care, because in Darwin we need a vehicle, so we need to service our vehicle. In other services, they will charge you like more than 150 for general service, but with the KT Auto Care and then with our benefit card, you just need to pay 120, like change your oil and then filter as well. And then if you want to do inspection your car, you just need to pay $57.20, and then you get a discount 10% of other requirements.
And I really want to stress the $57.20 inspection. I mean, it's a really good deal. I have to pay $100 to $150 inspection every year.
We're not from marketing yet.
It's good.
We are customer.
I genuinely want it.
And then the next one.
And Jetty, every person will get a free soft drink. And then IRIS, but unfortunately for IRIS, the discount is only meant for students. So every student will get a 10% off discount, and same with Ichi Izakaya Ramen. It's located in the city next to the mall. Have you ever been to that place? 10% per person.
And if you have a more question and more information, so stay with us, connect with us. We have two media, social media at the moment. Facebook, PPIA Australia NT, and then Instagram, PPIA NT _membership card. And then we just launched our website. It's at the ppiant.wixsite.com/2020. There's a lot of information over there, so you can stay tuned on our website. And then, yeah, feel free if you want to call us or
Talk about it after this? Yeah, sure. That's pretty much it, I think.
Yeah, all right.
You're all hungry now.
Thank you, Mr. Farhan.
Thank you. So thank you for Dito and Anake. We're almost at the end of our event tonight. But before that, I would like to invite Bapak Konsul Gulfan dan Bapak Niko to do the certificate handover to the two of the speakers, please. And also Mas Mujib dan Ibu Dina. To symbolize. Iya. Atau satu-satu dulu. Oh iya, satu-satu dulu. Satu. Dapat nggak? Curang. Sebentar, 1 second.
Farhan, you had one job, Farhan.
Dari kelihatan.
1, 2, 3.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Bisa berempat, Pak. Foto yang terakhir berempat.
Ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we would like to take a picture of everyone. Please, can you please gather before we go for dinner?
The 10% off.
So everyone, please.
Everyone, could we take family photo, please? Ayo semua.
Kayaknya yang muda-muda di bawah.
Atau di depan sudah. Ya.
Mas Mujib ini apa kemudian gue?
Cepatin aja.